Hi, I'm Sayakat Cosplay and welcome to a new video. Today's video is all about how I made the newest version of Evelynn, the All Out version of Evelynn. Apparently, I can't stop making new versions of her. So today's video is a how I put this together tutorial video. If you want to make All Out Evelynn for yourself, I have a build guide available in my eShop. Link for that is down below. All right, let's go ahead and see how I put this costume together. Hello and welcome to the All Out Evelynn voiceover for the video. This video tutorial will cover the making of the jacket, skirt, and bra harness top. If you're looking to make the claws and style her wig, I have some other Evelynn videos that are linked in the description box below for those parts of the costume. If you want to make this cosplay for yourself, I have linked in my shop below all the patterns and sewing instructions I used to make this cosplay. I also have all the materials that I used linked down below. If you buy these through my affiliate links, that helps me out and you get to make an awesome cosplay, so win-win. I've also linked my affiliate code and discount code for Famore Cutlery if you want to get your hands on some of the awesome scissors that I used to make this cosplay. Okay, sellout time over. Time to make the things. Except I am not making her lashers in this video tutorial. Sayakat Cosplay did a really awesome tutorial and has patterns on how to make those. So check out that video linked in the description box below as well for how to make those. I started with the jacket. I made a paper pattern on my mannequin to use as the pattern for my mock-up. If you're new here, hi! I use old newsprint ads to make paper patterns since it's free paper that shows up in my mailbox every week, so why not? If you're not new, welcome back to my insanity. Hi. Always make a mock-up. Even if you're using a commercial pattern, if you have never used that pattern before, make a mock-up. Or if you're drafting your own patterns, make a mock-up. I've learned this the very hard way. Don't be like me and go hard mode. Make a dang mock-up. I'm using spandex leftover from some other old project to mock up my garments. I usually use muslin to make mock-ups with, but that is a non-stretch fabric and this is a all stretch fabric cosplay, so I'm using a stretch fabric to make a mock-up with. I put together the mock-up, tried it on, and made notes on alterations that I wanted to make to the pattern. I made some new pattern pieces in paper and laid out all my pattern bits on the fabric to cut out. I ended up getting 2 yards each of the black metallic stretch fabric and blue metallic stretch fabric. These are from Joann's. And that turned out to be the perfect amount of black fabric, but way too much of the blue. You only need about 1 yard of blue for your own reference if you're making this, but when in doubt, always overbuy. You will thank yourself later. After drafting the pattern, making the mock-up, cutting the fabric out, making sure to add in seam allowances because I didn't add the seam allowances to most of my pattern, except for the sleeve. Don't judge my logic, that's just how I rolled on this one. The digital pattern notes, which pieces you need to add seam allowances to and which you don't. I did at least make those notes on the pattern, I'm not a complete savage. Anyway, once that's all traced out, ready to go, cut everything out and sewed all the front panels together with a zigzag stitch. I'm going to alternate between zigzag and straight stitching on some of these pieces. It's noted in the sewing instructions what to use where, I hope, most of the time, I think. But anyway, I sewed all the front panels together. I sewed the front panels to the back panel at the sides and shoulders with a zigzag stitch. I hate drafting collars and figuring out how to install them. So this one is a single piece that lays flat, so I decided to use a yoke to finish the collar instead of lining the whole jacket because lining stretch fabric is hard. So I didn't do it. I used a yoke. The collar, you can place the collar pieces at the fold of the fabric, but I just cut out from the fabric so it has a seam at the center back. So I placed the right sides together and sewed that back seam, and I repeated that for the second set of collar pieces since this is a lined collar. I opened out the collar pieces, placed the right sides together and clipped them together, aligning center seams. I sewed around the outer edge with a straight stitch, flipped the collar right side out, made sure that the outer edge was all nice and aligned by clipping things together, and top stitched around the outer edge of the collar with a straight stitch and basted the inner edge. One quick note here before I keep going. This fabric is a metallic stretch fabric. Metallic fabrics, even if doesn't have metallic threads in it, don't lend themselves well to being pressed. So if you are going to press any of your seams or anything on this costume, make sure to use a low heat setting and use a pressing cloth when pressing these fabrics. Otherwise you run the risk of ruining your fabrics. So be careful. I ended up not using an iron on any of this because I didn't want to accidentally ruin my fabrics. These cosplay fabrics, while awesome, don't necessarily heat well. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be using an iron, use a low heat setting, use a presser cloth, be careful. All right, back to the sewing. Once that collar was all set, I placed the right side of the yoke together at the center back seam, sewed that piece together, so sewed down the center seam. I opened out the yoke and edge finished the outer edge of the yoke. I just made a hem on that. You can use a rolled hem, simple folded hem, or if you just want to zigzag stitch or serge that edge, you can. That's all up to you. I lined the center of the collar with the center back of the jacket body, and there are notches on the front panels to note where the lower points of the collar need to align. I pinned all those layers, basted them together, and then put the yoke over it, right sides together with the jacket body collar pieces, aligning all of that at the back center seam. All of the raw edges should be exposed and facing inwards. I straight stitched all the layers together, trimmed those seam allowances down to about 1/4 inch, I think. I turned the yoke to the center and made sure that the seam allowances were underneath the yoke as well, not underneath the jacket. And then I understitched the yoke about 1/8 of an inch from the seam. And I turned the yoke under. I wasn't sure if I wanted to top stitch the front of the jacket. I ended up doing that. You don't necessarily need to, but I top stitched the front of the jacket and the front of the collar. So the collar is top stitched around the front edge and around the back edge of the collar. All right, collar is installed. It's time to put in your sleeves. So with right sides together, sew together the cuff pieces at the bottom edge with a stretch stitch and repeat for the second cuff. So there's 4 pieces of cuff total. You're gonna make 2 cuffs. So turn the right sides out, top stitch that bottom edge with a stretch stitch, and you're going to pin only 1 layer of cuff to the bottom of the sleeve. So put right sides together of the cuff and the sleeve piece and leave 1 layer of the cuff free, and then stitch the pinned section with a stretch stitch. You're gonna turn the seam allowance towards the cuff, fold over about 3/8 of an inch of the free cuff edge. So basically you're gonna be hiding the seam allowance inside the cuff, and then sew that free edge down with a zigzag stitch. So you're gonna have a cuff that has stitching at the top and the bottom. And then I just sewed the sleeve seam down with a zigzag stitch. I turned the sleeve right side out and turn the jacket to have the right side in, and insert the sleeve into the arm side and pin in place with about a 3/8 inch seam allowance. By the way, arm side is the real term for armhole. I didn't know this until maybe a couple months ago. I learn as I go too, so now you know that's the real term for an armhole. Arm side. Align the center top of the sleeve with the center top of the arm side. The sleeve actually doesn't have a lower jacket body seam to align to due to how it's paneled. So you're going to kind of have to align these things without having that bottom seam to align to. I would advise basting the seam in place first to check how that sleeve is set, and then once satisfied, sew in the sleeve with a zigzag stitch and remove the basting. Okay, last part of the jacket is to finish the lower edge. So we're gonna make a edging around the whole jacket with black. So you're going to align the trim right sides together with the jacket so that the raw edge of the trim extends about a ½ inch beyond the finished front edge of the jacket. You're going to sew the trim onto the lower edge of the jacket with a straight or stretch stitch. This doesn't actually matter. And then what you're going to do is turn in the bottom edge of the trim about 3/8 of an inch so that you have, like the cuff, a kind of, clean edge, not raw. And then you're going to place the right sides of the trim together, making the seam edge and free edge even. Sew the short edges closed so that you can cut those seam allowances and turn the trim edge out so that you have a nice clean trim edge. You're going to turn the seam allowance towards the trim, pin the free edge of the trim over the seam allowances to hide the seam allowance, same thing with the cuff, and then sew that down with a zigzag stitch. And if you want, you can finish the lower edge of the trim with a zigzag top stitch. The last step on the jacket is to finish all the seams with pinking shears or pinking scissors, so pink all the seams. If you really wanted to, you could get real fancy and French seam this whole thing. I don't think that's really super necessary, but if you wanted to do that, you can. I didn't do that here. If you know how to French seam, go for it. If you don't need to, don't want to, whatever. Voila! An Evelynn jacket. So shiny. To be honest, I may just wear this in my regular wardrobe just because it's awesome. Once I put it all together, I realized the black side panel is smaller than it is in the art and on the character model, but I think if it had encompassed the second front side panel, it would have been too large on the piece. Sometimes adapting bits to real life means stylistic changes, so it's up to you to determine if you want a larger black side panel or not. Okay, on to the skirt. The actual construction of the skirt is really simple and straightforward, but all the details on the skirt made the thing hard. I did the same thing with the skirt as with the jacket. I made a paper pattern, made a mock-up, adjusted the pattern a bit, and went from there. With the skirt, I also marked out where all the details needed to go to figure out placement of those details on the skirt. So I started the skirt by placing the right sides together of the skirt front panel and the back panels, aligning at notches, which are on the pattern. I don't make notches, whatever. Sew together at side seams using a zigzag stitch. So now that this base is made, all detail work will need to be completed before the panels get sewn together at the back. The first thing I did was adding the zip details. So these zips are all welted zips. This is the same process as if you were making a welted pocket, a welted zipper pocket, but there's no pockets in here. I used 10-inch metal separating zippers, and I think this was a great choice for this costume. Link to the exact ones I used are in the description box and in the pattern instructions if you want to get the same exact zippers. Also, pro tip, buying zippers in bulk on Amazon or Etsy is great. Avoid buying them at Joann's because they are so much cheaper in bulk, and if you sew a lot like I do, you will thank yourself for having a zipper stash. The pattern has the zip placement for a 10-inch zipper marked. I transferred these marks to the wrong side of the skirt using tailor's chalk. You can actually, transfer these to the right side of the pattern, which is much better. I just didn't realize I was doing it on the wrong side, but somehow by magic I could see the marks on the right side to avoid marking them out again. You're going to cut out 3 approximately 11-inch by 2-inch wide long strips of fabric to make the welts. So you're going to transfer the box marking, the 10-inch box. It's about a 1/2 inch wide, so a 10-inch long by 1/2 inch wide box marking to the wrong side of these strips of fabric. You're going to align those marked boxes on the fabric strips with the markings on the skirt and pin them in place with the right sides together. I also marked out where I'm going to be cutting the box open. So you're going to cut down the center of the box, and then at the corners, basically you're going to cut a little triangle. So this helps the box open up properly once you've got it sewn in place. So you're going to sew the box into the fabric following your markings, and then cut it open. And be careful not to cut into the stitching. Okay, now you're gonna flip the strip around to the back of the skirt panels. One thing to help this box become more crisp is you can understitch along both long edges, being careful not to catch the short edges or short edge seam allowances in this understitching. This isn't necessary, but it does help make this box be really nice and crisp, especially because pressing this fabric is hard and problematic. All right, once you've got the box turned around to the other side of the fabric, you're going to want to prep your zipper to be sewn into place. You're going to want to sew a couple of stitches across the zipper tape at both ends of the zipper. This just makes the zipper easier to handle and makes sewing it in a bit easier. So you're going to place the zipper under the box so that the zipper pull and zip end align with the ends of the fabric box. You're going to pin that in place and carefully top stitch around the zipper about an 1/8 of an inch or less from the box edge. And there you have it. You have a nicely welted zipper. And you're gonna have to do that again 2 more times. Oi. But in the end, it looks great. Now to add the lacing details. So I have a pattern piece for a lacing panel. You're going to cut one of those out from the fabric, and then you're going to cut that in half. So you're going to have 2 panel pieces. Hem both sides of both panels with about a 3/8 inch hem. Basically, you're going to make a paneling piece that's about 1.5 inches wide. And this is a piece to place the grommets into. Mark the placement of the panels on the front of the skirt. So there are marking lines on the pattern that you can follow to figure out where these panels go. And that's going to help you figure out where to start placing your grommets. You're going to want to start placing your grommets about 1 inch up from the lower edge of the skirt, because you got to remember you're going to hem the skirt. And these grommets start pretty close to the edge of the skirt, so about a 1/2 inch up from the hemmed edge is where you want to start these grommets. I used 3/16 inch silver grommets for my grommet kit I got off Amazon, which is linked in the description box down below. You could use larger grommets if you want, but these work really well. I ended up marking grommet placement about every 2 inches from that first grommet that I placed. To install the grommets at the marks, you're going to either use the fabric punch that comes in the grommet kit or cut out a very small circle with small scissors. You do need to cut open the fabric. If you don't cut the fabric open, the grommet won't install properly. You're going to need to have a grommet press with a hammer to hammer these grommets in. I didn't really record that because it's placing grommets. You hammer those things in, you go forth, hammer more in. Once you have all the grommets placed, realign those now grommeted panels with the marks on the skirt panels, pin in place, and sew down to the skirt on the outer edges of these panels only. So you're going to leave the inner edges free so you can lace the ribbon into the skirt. I started lacing from the bottom up, so from the bottom to the top of the skirt. And at the top, I tied off any excess ribbon, and any excess ribbon or panel will be secured when the waistband is sewn on. To sew on the waistband of the skirt, you're going to need to finish the skirt first. You're going to sew the skirt at the back of this back seam. So basically your skirt has been open and not finished at this point. Put those panels together and sew up the back seam, leaving the top 7 inches of the back open and free. Those top 7 inches, you're going to baste those together so that you can install a zipper closure at the top of the back of your skirt. Since this is a pencil skirt, you probably want a zipper in this thing. The easiest way to install a zipper is baste those top 7 inches of the skirt and then lay that seam open. Place your zipper aligning the top of the zipper tape with the top edge of the fabric. and pin that zipper to the seam, aligning the center of the seam with the center of the zipper. Make sure not to pin in any of the front of the skirt. Just be careful when pinning this thing in. You're only pinning through the back fabric. Once the thing's pinned in, take a contrasting thread color and baste this thing in. This isn't actually what I did, but this is the best way to put in a zipper for people who are new to zippers. So do as I say, not as I do, because yeah. Anyway, you don't want to baste the zipper in with a contrasting thread by hand, just so you can see where your basting is and you can see where to take it out later. Once you have the zipper basted in, you can switch your machine over to a zipper foot and sew that zipper in. So you're just going to sew around the outer edge of the zipper, making sure not to catch the front panel of the skirt. This is going to be a little tricky because this is a tube and you just have to push the front of the skirt away from the getting caught in sewing in the zipper. Once your zipper is installed, you can attach the waistband. It's the same exact procedure as doing the trim on the lower edge of the jacket. So I'm not going to explain it again, but basically just do what I said already. That makes sense? Yes, I think so. To finish off the skirt, you're going to want to install a hook and eye at the top of the waistband and hem the skirt. I just hemmed it with about a 3/8 half inch hem, and that's it. Congratulations, you have now made a skirt and a jacket top. The last part is the bra top. For the bra harness piece, I patterned off an existing strapless bra I had. Why strapless? I don't know, but that's the choice I made and I'm rolling with it. The harness is pretty custom, so the pattern only includes pieces for the bra cups and side straps, and this is for a size C chest. If you are not that size, you're going to need to resize these pieces appropriately. The rest of the straps are just 2-inch wide strips that I cut out of the length of the fabric, so they're 58 inches long, and hemmed them in about a 1/2 inch on either side, so I ended up with 1-inch strips that I cut up as needed for the harness. Fun fact, I did try to make these by making a tube and turning it inside out with my tube turner, but this type of fabric does not cooperate with the tube turner. It's just too sticky. So I abandoned that ship and just hemmed the strips. Also, don't do as I did, do as I say. Once again, I ended up using cotton batting to pad the bra cups instead of actual bra cups and underwires, and the fit on the top is not as great as if I had used actual cups and underwire. I just didn't have any of that stuff on hand, and I was in go for it mode and didn't want to stop and wait for materials to come in or go out and get them. Go get them. You will thank yourself. Anyway, if you don't feel like making your own top and harness, covering an old bra in fabric and buying a harness is also a great option for this top. Not everyone is as super extra as I am. I know most people aren't, so well, this is what I did. Anyways, here's how to make this sucker. So I cut out 4 of each pattern piece, making sure I had about 3/8 inch seam allowance from, this is all from the black metallic fabric. With right sides together, sew a zigzag stitch around the edge of the strap section, leaving the edge that faces the cups open. I flipped that right side out and then top stitched around that edge with a zigzag stitch. I created the strapping as needed, so I made all of those 1-inch wide straps. I ended up making about 3 58-inch long strips to make the bra top and to make the garters if you wish to make your own garters. For the cups, with right sides together, I sewed with a straight stitch the top bra cup piece to the bottom bra cup piece, making sure to ease around the curves. I then top stitched either side of that seam with a straight stitch, and I clipped the seams close to the stitching so that when it turns right side out, it curves nicely and doesn't bunch anything or do anything weird. If you're doing as I say and not as I do, sew in the bra cup to the lining section by basting the cups into that inner lining of the bra top. Basically, the outer edge side and the lining side are the same exact pattern. You just got to choose which one you want to be facing in towards the chest and which one you want to be facing out towards the world. And then here comes the fun part, which is placing in all the strapping into the bra cups before sewing those together. So you're going to want to pin in the strapping sections, pin in the strapping section on the outer edge of the bra cup facing strap in matching raw edges, and then the 1-inch strapping, you're also going to do the same thing, matching raw edges outwards and pinning that in towards the cup. So sewing this thing together with all these things facing in is going to be a little difficult, but you can do it. The pattern mark has marks on where to place the strapping. The strapping, the small strapping, the length of that one, you're going to want it to be about 6 to 8 inches long. And pin all of that together, sew around the outside, leaving open the inner edge of the bra cup, and flip that all inside out. Once that's all flipped inside out, you're going to want to install the central O-ring between the bra cups. This is going to hold the cups together and is that kind of like piece that holds most bras together, most underwire bras together. Instead of a fabric piece, it's an O-ring in this case. And in my case, I used a D-ring. I don't know why, I just used a D-ring. Anyway, to install the D-ring, you're going to take small pieces of strapping, put it around the ring, and then insert that into the open edge of the bra cup. To finish off the bra cup, fold in the raw edges, making sure that the O-ring is placed where you want it and the raw edges of the strapping that are going to hold it in place are inside the bra cups. And then top stitch that all closed. And do that again for the other bra cup, and you have something that kind of looks like a bra top. Hooray! To make the rest of the harness, I'm going to take some of the strapping and make a piece that goes around my neck, and then measure out other pieces to attach to the remaining 3 O-rings that are going to go into this harness. Now, this is a pretty custom piece, so I didn't make any pattern pieces that have sizing on how long these strap pieces are. That's really going to be up to whoever's making this piece, how long these things are, what they look like. I don't have any strapping from the back of the neck section down to the straps on the back. You can put that on if you want to, but it's not necessary. This thing holds up pretty well, just being attached to the neck and around the back like a halter top. The last thing, which I forgot to record, is that I made garters for her thigh-high stockings. It's just some of the strapping with a Velcro closure around the waist and other bits sewn together, and bam, garters. It's pretty simple and straightforward. The closures on the bra that I used were just Velcro, so there's Velcro at the back of the neck and around the back of the chest. So you could use Velcro, you could use hooks and eyes or snaps. That's pretty much it. The really last thing that I did was add a snap to the center of the skirt waistband that snaps onto the piece of the harness that comes down off the bra top. And there you have it. That's how I put together this version of Evelynn, which I hope can help you put together your own version of Evelynn. Thanks for watching. If you have any additional questions on how I made this, please don't forget to leave a comment down below. Like this video if you liked it, and if you're feeling a little generous, you can hit that subscribe button. All right, folks, I'll see you in the next video.